So who are the most overrated bosses in the Souls franchise? So I'll be going one by one in each game and telling you who I think is the most overrated boss. Now, I want to say this. I'm not going to give you the whole spiel of overrated doesn't mean bad. I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times before, and I'm sure you know it. But one thing is, I generally believe some of these bosses are S tier. They're just a bit overrated by their fandom and within their game. Not that these bosses are bad at all. Like I said, I'm not going to go into that. But one thing is, I have watched videos similar to this one because I want to just get some ideas, some opinions on how to make the video. And a lot of the lists seem very similar to each other. What bothers me, I think if a boss is overrated, not a lot of people should agree with you when you call them overrated. Of course, I'll probably still have a lot of people agreeing with me, so some of these bosses are pretty popular. So some people will just generally find them overrated. But you let me know if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Even if you don't agree with me, I hope I make my reasonings clear enough where you can understand where I'm coming from. But let me know what boss you think is overrated. I won't waste any more of your time. Let's get into the video. So for Demon Souls, I have the Penetrator. Now listen, if you go down my videos, I'm sure I have a video on the Penetrator talking about how good he is. But I've changed my mind ever since I made that video because, listen, he's a good fight. I especially give him kudos for his design and the fact he's the first night boss we fight in the Souls franchise. But aside that, I really don't have too much positives to say about him. For one, he's incredibly easy. Not that difficulty determines if a boss is good or not. It doesn't. But he just doesn't have anything going for him compared to the other bosses that you fight later on. For example, Old King Allant. I believe he just has a better moveset, has better lore, has better arena, better presentation. I just don't think I'll ever pick Penetrator over someone like Allant. Even someone like Flame Lurker, I believe, is better. I think Penetrator looks a lot cooler, but Flame Lurker is just a lot more memorable fight. I just don't really get much enjoyment out of fighting the Penetrator because I just find them so incredibly easy. Sometimes you can even step back and trade hits with them. I don't really get any pleasure from learning his moveset. I've played Demon Souls 3 times, twice the remake, once the original, and I've never died to this guy, and basically every other boss has at least killed me once, at least the notable ones have, but he's the only notable boss that hasn't even killed me once, so I just kind of honestly forget about him at times. Outside of his design, I really don't find him to be that interesting, so that's why I believe he's overrated. He is still a good boss, so I'd give him like top 3 in Demon Souls probably. So for Dark Souls 1, we have Black Dragon Calamity. Before I get into negatives or talking about why things overrated, let's get into some positives. Dragon Calamity has one of the coolest designs I have ever seen in a dragon. First time seeing him, I felt genuine intimidation, which is obviously a good feeling. I think his soundtrack is probably one of the best in Dark Souls 1. I think it's an amazing soundtrack. And his introduction with the blacksmith shooting him is always really cool to see every single time. Now you might be asking, why is Black Dragon Calamite on this overrated thing, since you're talking about only positives with them? And I want to say, I think Calamite is probably one of the best bosses in Dark Souls 1 when it comes to presentation. I think his moves are really flashy. I already talked about his design, his introduction. I think it's all very awesome. But when it comes to fighting him, I can't really say I enjoy him compared to other Dark Souls 1 bosses. Now, do I think it's a bad fight? Absolutely not. I think he's still top 5 in Dark Souls 1 just because the presentation is so good. And his moveset even isn't bad. I think it's a good moveset. I just don't have as much fun fighting him compared to some other Dark Souls 1 bosses and some of the future dragon fights. Not even, let's not go too into the future. Even someone like Sin from Dark Souls 2, I think is a better dragon fight than him. I enjoy fighting him more. His moves are a little better. Calamity had some moves that I just really don't enjoy dodging, so I'm just going to put him on here. But I want to say I don't think Dark Souls 1 has a boss that I really consider to be that overrated. I think all the bosses that get praise deserve the praise. Even Calamity, I think to some degree deserve the praise. I just don't hold him to the same standard as other people do in the entire franchise and in Dark Souls 1. So I'm just going to put him on this list, but still a very good fight, and I understand why people like him. I now run to Dark Souls 2, and for Dark Souls 2, I probably have one of my controversial ones. I'm going to go with Sir Alone. Now, Sir Alone is an absolutely fantastic boss. He's going to have the issue that we run into with some other bosses that I don't think there's anything wrong with him particularly. Maybe there's minor flaws that he has compared to other bosses, but the reason he's on this list, not because he's necessarily flawed himself, but I just feel like he's massively outclassed by the two bosses he has compared to super often with Fume Knight and Ivory King. Now, I have a few issues with Sir Alone, one of them being his boss run, I would say is the main one. Now, a lot of people say that the boss run doesn't affect the boss, and that's kind of a hard one for me, because even though I kind of agree, but I also have a hard time, because Sir Alone is a pretty difficult boss. I'd say he's one of the hardest in Dark Souls 2, and I'm someone that likes to do challenge runs, like doing no hits, I like doing no deaths, and it's kind of hard for me to want to practice Sir Alone because of his long boss run, and it's a difficult one too, it's not only long. So I feel like for Souls games where you're encouraged to learn the boss's movesets, the bad boss run does take away points from, especially when it's compared to Ivory King and Fume Knight. Those two both have very short runbacks, basically no enemies between. So it's very easy to learn them, fight them over and over again, learn their movesets. And Sir Alone just doesn't give you that. And for me, one of my favorite parts of Souls game is learning movesets, and Sir Alone doesn't really give me that feeling, so that's a lot of deducted points from him. Another thing is he does have the most broken hitboxes in Dark Souls 2. Again, I haven't had a massive problem with this, so I can't say it's a big flaw for me personally, but I still have had more issues with him compared to some other bosses, so I can still deduct a little bit of points. But overall, I believe SOULSBORNE is a fantastic boss, the beautiful boss arena, amazing lore, and a very fun moveset. He is just outclassed by some other bosses within the game, and that's why I believe he is overrated in Dark Souls 2. So for Bloodborne, I have Father Gascoigne. Now listen to me, Father Gascoigne is not a bad boss by any means. I will actually say this, I believe that he is the best first boss the franchise has ever offered. And I honestly don't think he will be outdone anytime soon. I think he's just overall way too fantastic, amazing lore, amazing moveset. But that's exactly his problem. I believe that he is a fantastic introduction boss. But outside of that, I feel like he lacks severely, especially when it comes to the top 4 in Bloodborne. Ludwig, Orphan of Kos, Maria, and Gehrman. I've seen way too many people put Gascoigne over one of them, which is a take I just do not understand. I think his lore is very tragic, it's very sad, but it's way too isolated from the story of Bloodborne for me to really prefer it. And his moveset is quite simple. I think it's a very fun moveset for teaching the mechanics of parrying, but I think after fighting someone like Kos or Maria, or even Mother Ligarius, his moveset does get a little bit boring. So these days, I can't really say I enjoy his fight, but I always see endless praise for him because of how good he is, how fantastic he is, and even though I don't disagree with those sentiments, I just don't think he's as good as people say he is. Again, he's a fantastic boss fight, the best first boss the franchise has made so far, and I don't think he will be top for a very long time. But I think compared to the overall cast of Bloodborne, he is way too praised. I don't even believe he's top 5 in the cast. Still a good boss though. So for Sekiro, I have Shinobi Owl. Now I want to say this, I don't even believe Shinobi Owl is that overrated. The issue with Sekiro is that it has a very small boss cast, and I feel like every boss that gets praise really deserves the praise. All these bosses are fantastic. The only reason I'm putting Shinobi Owl on the list is because I have nobody else to put in place of him. 1, 2, I believe they're just a better version of him later with Father Owl. So I don't really see the praise for Shinobi Owl because Father Owl just does everything better, and that's the only reason he's on this list. This will be a very short section compared to the other section of this video because I just don't really have much reasoning to talk about Shinobi Owl. I think he's a good fight. He's built up really well. The only reason I believe he's overrated because, like I said, there's a different version of him that's just way better in every single way, so I don't really see the praise for him. And that's it. So for Dark Souls 3, we have Nameless King, and honestly, the reason Nameless King is on here is right in front of your face. It's the first phase. I think the first phase of Nameless King is generally mid, borderline on bad. I really don't like it. It feels clunky. It's a very easy, I will tell you this, the bird does take a lot of damage, which is nice. But the fact you have to fight him every single time to get to Nameless King really does bring it down for me because I really don't enjoy fighting this phase. I don't like chasing this bird down. Sometimes his hitbox is weird for his head, so you can't even hit him. So it can be incredibly frustrating. The Nameless King himself is absolute perfection. I think he's a great boss fight that I have generally no complaints about. But I believe compared to other Dark Souls 3 bosses, he's not one of the best ones. I think he's not top 5. He is definitely top 10. But I think his first phase does bring him down. Again, I think his story is very good. His second phase, him being himself, is awesome. But the first phase really does bring him down for me. And I don't think he competes with some of the best Dark Souls 3 bosses like Soul of Cinder, Gale, Medir, Sister Fried. But he is still a great boss. For Elden Ring, I have Redon. This is base game Redon, Star Scrolls Redon, not the DLC one. I think he's amazing. I always talk about him. But base game Redon, when I first played Elden Ring, was honestly my favorite fight in the entire game. I love the festival gimmick. I love the story. I love everything about him. But when I replay this fight, it just doesn't have the same feel. I honestly just find Redon to be kind of a chore to fight. The whole gimmick of the festival is really fun being with some multiple people the first time seeing it. But on second time, it can be just a bit of a chore. And Redon's moveset really isn't good enough to carry the entire fight. I think it's mostly carried by Spectacle. And Spectacle only has its effect the first time. So Redon on replay has really lost its charm for me, which is unfortunate. But at least we have DLC Redon now, which has still great lore. Redon's story is obviously still attached to him. He has a great moveset, one of the most complex in the entire franchise. There's no reason for me to like this Redon over the other Redon. He's a great spectacle fight that I really appreciate the gimmick that FromSoft went for. I think it worked out great for them. I hope they do more fights like this in the future. But I feel like on replay it just doesn't hit the same. And that's why I believe Redon is just overrated. I feel like there's a lot of better bosses with better movesets and better gimmicks that are still fun even on replays. And I just don't feel that with Redon. Well, that's it for me. These are who I think is the most overrated boss in each FromSoft vs. Souls game. Please let me know if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you agreed with my reasonings, and let me know who you think is the most overrated boss in each Souls game. If you like Souls games, I have way more videos on them, so if you want to watch those, go ahead. If you like the video, please like and subscribe.